Guzweski, there he is. Chad Hatley, me, Cheryl Kilday, Mike Mahaney, Jeff Martini.
Mike Mahaney's
Jeff's
here.
not here.
Thank you. Mark McDowell,
Here.
Billy McGonigal, Ray Sessions,
Here.
Kathy Weiss, and Monica Vieg.
Here.
Great. So I know I got a couple of notes that people were possibly going to be a few minutes late. So we'll go ahead and start. And first of all, just thanking everybody for your time again today. Wanted to share.
Can you turn that up a little bit? I can't hear.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to share something that Pat Dowling forwarded me from the public. He's the public information officer here at the city, but I don't know how much some of you have been following the sentiment being expressed on social media about closures. Do you close? Do you open? You know, that sort of thing. And there was somebody who commented to Pat, and he forwarded this and thought it might be something that would be worth sharing today. And I thought it was a good idea. So this is from somebody who does not live here. And she was on the city's Facebook page, and she sent a note saying, "Thank you for keeping the public informed. I vacation there for 2 weeks every fall, but I have learned from these posts on the city's Facebook page that there are a lot of opinions, and some think that tourists and transplants are somehow not important. It's very upsetting to read such negative comments from locals, in the tone and ignorance is very sad. So many people are ready to work and return to our normal lives. I was so discouraged by some of the discussions and name calling, I started looking at other beach destinations. But then I thought, nope, I'm not going to allow the nasty behavior of some folks on Facebook cloud something I've always felt, that North Myrtle Beach is a great place to visit. I've always been treated to the kindest hospitality when I visit. I hope you all have a great day, and soon we'll be back to normal. Thank you." And then she signed her name that I'm not going to say here, but interesting, you know, sort of capturing some of the sentiments that we're seeing. And as a recovery task force, you know, we've got a big job ahead of us trying to, you know, use our 30 days really wisely, and the clock is ticking, and getting some work done and really hearing from our citizens and our businesses is going to be part of that conversation as we move forward over the next couple of meetings. Today, we wanted to concentrate on, and the draft agenda that I sent out was to review the task force resolution. And I've got a copy of that. We had it sent out to all of you. Hopefully you have yours handy as well. And that's identifying resources, developing public outreach, recommending possible actions. But we also need to think about how to plan for some public input opportunities. I'm sure there's people that have some expertise that they'd like to share. We probably need to incorporate that into this as well. And then what else should we concentrate on that may not be in the resolution specifically, because it says such as, so there may be something that you feel like we need to include more specifically. And then today we'll work on assigning some work groups and creating some deadlines so we can get our information put together and discussed, and then you know, prepare a report that needs to go to City Council. And then our hope is that Mayor Hatley can give us an update on Accelerate South Carolina. They had their one big meeting last week, and then also she's on the governance committee, and they met yesterday. And I think that she might have some really good insights to share with us there. And then always have a time for us to do other business or things that you all are hearing or things that you'd like to share, making sure that we provide time for that at each meeting. So does anybody have any additions they'd like to see in our agenda today? All right, well then let's hit it. So, and I don't know, it's Allison that's driving the meeting. Do you have the resolution to do as a share screen, or should I pull it up? How can you pull that up so we can work from it, or just use it?
I do not have that, Cheryl, but I
Okay.
can get a copy of it.
Let's see if I have mine open. Hang on just a second. If mine's open, I could probably share mine, but I'm trying to find it here. Oh, let's see. I don't have mine open either. So I printed mine and highlighted on it, so I'd be prepared to go over it. Will you guys be okay if we don't have a copy on the screen for everybody to look at?
Sure.
In the resolution in section 2, it basically it says that we're to work on the economic recovery, identifying resources such as grants, loans, and other financial assistance. And so these are funds that would be available to businesses in the city of North Myrtle Beach. So just checking on who might be interested in serving in that work group, if there's ideas that people have for resources that we should be exploring. I mean, I know that the PPP and the disaster loans through the SBA and have been widely circulated. I think Waccamaw as a community foundation has had some grant opportunities. What else are you all seeing out there, and who would like to serve on that work group to expand our search on what resources might be available? You're all on mute probably, so remember to unmute.
Well, I think it would be good to have Mendel to work on the marketing since he's in that business.
Okay, thank you.
Mendel, well, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. We don't have a problem with that at all.
For the
How many do you want on that committee?
well, right now we were talking about more of the resources, the financial assistance. The marketing committee for the public outreach and information programs, there's 15 of us. And if we broke down into the resources, the outreach, and any sort of additional recommendations for actions that the city council could take. And then, let's see, I think those would be the main categories, right? So we could each have, 3 or 4 on those if somebody wanted to do 2. Otherwise, we'd really need like 3 on each committee.
So Cheryl, just to review what those committees are again, if you could list them again, that would be helpful.
Sure. So identifying resources such as grants, loans, and financial assistance, developing public outreach and information programs, and then developing recommendations for possible actions that will aid the economic recovery. So, and that one's a little bit general. It's like, are there other things basically that would help in the economic recovery that don't fit into these other 2 categories? The resolution, makes it really clear that we need to have a report, that we need to have public input, look at what, information there is as we're going through this process. And, but there's not a lot of, we get to put the specifics to it. It's written generally enough, right, Mayor, so that we can add some of those details to this.
Cheryl, it's Mark McDowell. I can help on the financial part.
Okay, great, thank you. Anybody else want to? I know we've been attending a lot of the different webinars and sessions on the different economic resources. I just got off of a webinar about the different grants that are in this package, as well as what's potentially coming from US travel. So there's, we could certainly help participate in that one as well.
Sure. This is Billy McGonigal. I can help as well.
Okay, thank you, Billy.
Welcome.
Great. I think Mendel, it'd be great if you could be on the messaging. Monica, I was hoping that you would be on that one as well, so that we've got the healthcare. Anybody else want to be on that committee? Joe and Kathy would be great too, getting the resident perspective as well. If one of you wanted to be on that. Joe, is that a yes or a no? I couldn't hear you, sorry. Now I can hear you. Go ahead. Joe, you took it off. Okay. Joe, we can't hear you. It's on mute again. There you go.
There we are.
There you are. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Be glad to help with the public outreach and information.
Okay. Great.
I'd be happy to serve on that outreach and public information as well.
Great. Thank you, Brandon. I feel like I'll be on that one as well, but since we've got a lot of things going on in that in addition, so that's great. Is there any interest from this group of suggesting any sort of protocols for the city, gathering them, sort of compiling any sort of idea that we should discuss and make some recommendations? I know some groups like ours are taking that on. How do you guys feel about that?
I feel like, so this is Mendel. I feel like if we're going to start having accommodations slowly open back up, I do feel like it's imperative that we identify the different restaurants that are offering curbside takeout and things of that nature to support them in the short term until they get their doors open back up. And then, I would love to hear the mayor's take on what she thinks about Accelerate South Carolina, because I think the biggest problem that we're having in the business community is we don't have any definitive dates. We don't know when things are going to happen or transpire. So setting up those protocols, we don't know what those standards are going to be. If they open up our restaurants, is it going to be at the 50%, occupancy in the
I'll be glad.
in the restaurant, things of that nature? What standards are going to be?
Address that, Mendel.
Yes, ma'am.
Yesterday at our Accelerate South Carolina meeting, we did talk about restaurants, but there was absolutely no guidelines established. I gave a lot of protocol guidelines that I felt could be put into place, and the restaurants could open soon. They were accepted by the governor. I think he liked a lot of those because he used every one of them in his press conference yesterday. But I will tell you who's driving the train on restaurants opening, and that's the South Carolina Restaurants Association. I don't think a lot of our restaurants along the Grand Strand, or at least the ones I've talked to, none of them are members of the South Carolina Association of Restaurants. So they really don't know what's going on because they're not members and they're not getting any information from them. The South Carolina Restaurant Association, they are not interested in opening soon. They're interested in getting the guidelines in place. Said they weren't interested in how soon they opened up. Of course, that's not what we're hearing from our restaurants. So I do think that the committee, the Accelerate South Carolina, will listen to the Restaurant Association. So But I know the governor yesterday made enough comments that he realizes that we must get these restaurants back open. And I think, and also the mayor of Greenville, who was the chairman of our committee, Mayor White, and he realizes the importance of moving these guidelines and protocols quick and trying to get our restaurants back open. So I'm just, just my gut feeling. I think that we may be able to see some parts of restaurants being open within the next week. I think another 7 days, probably 6-7 days, we'll probably see that.
Mayor, we reached out to the Restaurant Association to see if we could learn what they're working on to share with the community. So, we can certainly, follow up and see that. But in your comments, you said the Restaurant Association itself is not necessarily pushing for a particular date, a reopen date. They're concerned about protocols.
No, they're not.
So
But
we might be ahead of them.
yeah, and I think that pressure will build because let me just give you an example. If Billy goes to 10% or 15% or 20% this weekend and his units don't have kitchens, that means those people are going to go to the Chick-fil-A line, et cetera, et cetera. So, all of a sudden you got a 3-mile line, at Chick-fil-A or Logan's or whatever. So
Right.
that will have to move forward in some fashion. And just just for the good of the order, I got Cracker Barrel last night and takeout, and the manager unsolicited said that they'd gotten a 30-page memo of what they needed to do as far as spacing, how many tables to take out, whole new 30 pages of procedures, one-use menus, all waiters have to have a mask on, et cetera, et cetera. And they were told to have all that done by this Friday. So they obviously are getting prepared to reopen for sit-down dining in the state of South Carolina. Everybody in South Carolina got that 30-page memo, every Cracker Barrel, according to her. That was unsolicited.
Also, I talked with a restaurant owner yesterday afternoon, and he had received an 18-page document from the Cisco food distributor that has all of the guidelines that he was to follow. Where they got those guidelines, I do not know, but there are guidelines being sent out, and I think take that to him. They're probably giving it to all restaurants.
If I could say something, first of all, apologies to all of you. I was signing in the wrong way under Cheryl's latest email. I was going to the wrong thing, so my apologies. I could hear you, you couldn't hear me. First of all, Cheryl, I'm happy to be on any committees that you think would be good. I was thinking of the communications one, but wherever you think it would make sense. And to your point, Mayor, I printed something out of Newsmax that said the CDC drafts decision tree guidelines, and it has things in there like restaurants should use paper products, paper plates and plastic forks, and throw away condiments and things along those lines. So this was kind of interesting, as well as, of course, having sanitation protocols and cutting the tables back by about 50%, that sort of thing.
I saw that also, Kathy. And that may be part of what the South Carolina Restaurant Association is going to push as a CDC recommendation. But I have no idea, because my My committee is governance, and it does not include the restaurants. So until we have the next joint meeting, I will not have any idea what their recommendations are going to be. But that doesn't mean that I can't recommend, and I will be recommending my thoughts to the governor, and I'm going to send in actually today for our committee, I'm going to send in a list of protocols that I think that would be proper for our restaurants to follow.
Are we?
Mayor, it's Mark McDowell.
Yes.
I'm actually just reading, WIS is reporting that there was a letter sent from the South Carolina Restaurant Association to the governor's office. Doesn't say exactly when, but I guess in the last few hours, but it said that they recommended that, and I'm reading here, but that restaurants open outdoor dining areas on May the 4th and indoor seating by May the 11th. But it looks like that they think the dates may be pushed a little further back. And there are several guidelines that includes, let's see, sanitation requirements before reopening, taking temperatures of all employees and maintaining social distancing, and posting signs notifying customers of the measures in place to keep everyone safe. So it sounds like that the Restaurant Association is indeed trying to push for opening within the week.
Well, that sounds very good, because at our first meeting, that wasn't the message that they were sending, but they may have heard the governor and the rest of us talking yesterday that we need to get our restaurant businesses open, because I tried to really push the point that there's a lot of restaurants that are going to be bankrupt if they don't start opening soon. Mark, where did you find that on the internet?
It's actually WIS is reporting that.
Okay.
It just came out at 1:23 p.m.
Very good. This is a moving target. Things change every hour. And the governor, even though he puts an order in yesterday, tomorrow or the next day, he very likely will make some changes to those orders. So it's a moving target all the time.
Mayor, can you help me understand, how can an emergency order be extended? Like he extended this till the 15th, yet stores can open up, like furniture stores and other kinds of retail stores. I didn't understand that. It's supposed to be a stay at home or work order, but yet these other retail establishments opened, and that I found that confusing.
It is confusing. But the governor has the right to open whatever part of his ordinance that he wants to. And he did last week, open these non-essential businesses. Some of them, not all of them. And there again, it's just, I think it's just one baby step at a time to see what works and what's not going to work. The non-essential businesses have opened with certain procedures they have to follow, just like we were allowed to open the beach accesses and the public parking spaces. I see him doing this in small steps. So I know it sounds crazy, but he can change anything he wants to in his order.
Okay. If I can make one other comment, and that is, I don't know how many of you have been out to Publix or Home Depot or Aldi or any of that, but I think Publix is a perfect example of trying to do things right. They've really got it down, and I feel very safe going there. Home Depot was crazy. All they were doing was counting people going in to keep the limit down, but There was no sanitary actions. Nobody was wearing masks. Very few people were wearing masks. So I think, whatever recommendations we come up with, it should be, along the lines of the Publix and the Aldis who are doing it right.
Mayor, that was a question I have is, do you and city council want us to spend time on those protocols, or are we waiting for what the governor might try to do at the state level? Because there's so many layers to this. I want to make sure we spend our time as a task force concentrating on the things that the city council, is seeking advice, because that's our role, is to advise you on what those things would be.
Well, the protocols are being worked on up in Columbia, but I also think it's very important that we as businesses in our city are consistent with our protocols. There's something that we recommend. There's no way that you can enforce protocols. Protocols are not laws.
Right.
But it helps tremendously if we send out the recommendations to our restaurants, to our hotelers, to our rental companies, people like that. So I don't think it hurts for us to have our own set of protocols that we recommend.
Okay. So that would be
Excuse me if
another
I'm,
work group. Go ahead, Chad. I'm sorry.
I apologize, Cheryl. Kind of along these same lines here, one thing that would be beneficial, I think, especially to the accommodations, I don't know if there's been any discussion at the state level or the local level, but has there been anything talked about how we should handle people that come from essentially, I think the last time I checked, there were still 3 designated hotspots that we are not allowed to provide services to in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Has there been any discussion about how, when somebody like that, if they would happen to come to your hotel, your front desk, how they should be handled?
Chad, I have not had any discussion about how the individual rental companies are to handle. They certainly know by the governor's order that they are not to take a reservation from that area. And by the governor's orders, it would be illegal for them to take a reservation from those orders. So if someone is to report to the city that a group from New York is renting a house on 45th Avenue, then our police officers by law would have to go and follow through with that, and then turn around and cite the rental companies for doing it, because the law strictly says that they cannot rent to those areas. But I know there are people who have already made reservations, maybe from the New York area or the New Jersey area, Connecticut. The rental companies would need to contact those people and say, by under our governor's orders, you are not allowed to come into our state at this time. And I know that's going to be difficult, and it probably sends a mixed message to the people that, hey, you don't want us there. But it is in the order, and we have to follow that order.
But just so you know, what we do under Executive Order 2020-14, we basically tell them that they have to quarantine for 14 days. We don't have the authority to go in and drag them out of the unit. What we do is cite the realtor company, but they're supposed to quarantine. But, the devil's always in the details. Even though they're in quarantine, they're still allowed to go to Publix or Home Depot or the pharmacy or the gas station or the Chick-fil-A drive-thru or anything
get
else.
Something to eat.
So, it's kind of but we actually have patrol officers assigned to that 7 days a week. As a matter of fact, I sent the council some of the ones this weekend that I directed to them to go check, because they said, hey, the people are from New York, you know, and sometimes it turns out that they may be from New York, but they may own the unit, which there's no prohibition for them, you know, staying in their own unit.
Thank you.
Brandon, did you want to chime in on the accommodations?
Yeah, we, as we discussed in our last meeting, we put together some protocols that really spell out what the governor's orders are and how that may affect certain folks who may be arriving to our area. Of course, there is an executive order that prevents the making or accepting of any new reservations for folks from the tri-state area or any other area of significant community spread as spelled out by the CDC. That's the way that the executive order reads. And it began on a date certain, which I don't have at my fingertips, but we certainly are in compliance with that here at Elliott Beach Rentals and have made staff quite aware that that is the reality. And they've been communicating that to people who've been calling and inquiring. We have not had many at all, to be fair, so we haven't had to cross that bridge to Chad's question. Separately, there is the quarantine order, as Mike stated, for folks who are coming from the tri-state order that remains in effect for folks who should travel to our area outside of the executive order I just spoke of that prevented the making of new reservations. We are communicating that to our guests. We distributed, I think earlier today via the chamber, our thoughts for policies and procedures, and we hope that they are helpful for other folks in the accommodation space. And we would welcome any input from those who received it about things that could be improved on it. It's a starting point. It's what we feel was appropriate, but any input would be greatly appreciated. But one of the points was to make clear those executive orders to guests so that they're aware of that when they arrive.
Thank you.
Cheryl, I did ask Rick if he would take the leadership role and preparing protocol procedures for rental companies and share with all rental companies. And I think that's what Brandon is speaking on. And they have done so. I think that it's very important that those rules get, those protocol procedures are given to all. I would like to have a copy so that I can send to the Accelerate South Carolina exactly what we are doing to take care of our own area. I think it's important they know that, look, we don't want to just open for business. When we open, we want to be safe.
Right.
So I would love to have a copy of those procedures so that I can send them on to the Accelerate South Carolina.
We'll be happy to share those with you, Mayor. They may already be in your inbox, but in case they're not, I will send them along personally.
Okay, thank you.
Brandon, can you send it to both her and me?
I sure will.
I don't remember seeing it, but I got 390 unread emails in here from this morning, so.
I understand.
I'd like to go back to the restaurants. It concerns me. I wish that we had someone from the restaurant industry to step up and help design, and maybe 2 or 3, and help design the procedures for the restaurants so that we can also say, this is what our own restaurant owners are doing and taking precaution. This is what their recommendations are and their procedures are going to be. It's very important that we know, and throughout the state, they know that we really care.
Mayor, I think Mark McDonald and Jeff Martini have been working on some of that. And last week there was a restaurant. We had a business sector meeting with restaurants, and there's another one going on this afternoon, actually, with the chamber. But Mark, do you want to address part of what you guys are working on?
Yeah, that's correct. Jeff and I, and actually with a couple other restaurant people in the area, did work on some protocols already, and we have a list, and we were actually going to send that out to you. You tell me who to send it to. Cheryl, I was going to send it to you is what I planned to do.
Okay.
And basically, it was our impression that, or our belief that it would be best coming from restaurant people, as far as what we were capable of doing.
Yes.
And you know what would make the most sense as far as to make the public understand that we're doing the things that have to be done for it to be safe. So yes, we are working on that. We've actually finished it. I have to just send it out to you.
Thank you.
May I?
Go ahead, Joe.
Mark, Joe Gashowski. We have 2 restaurants as well as 2 golf clubhouses. And in speaking to the fellows that own the restaurant, they've got the protocols in place with the hand sanitizer, the thermometer, social distancing. Their question and concern is, are they going to be limited by the number of patrons per square foot? Because if they're limited by some unworkable number for them, they might as well not even open their doors, because you have to hire bartenders, staff, servers, etc. But if you're only going to be able to put 5 or 6 people in your building, it's not worth them going to full service, and they might as well stay with curbside and pickup. Is there anything like that in the those guidelines you received?
We were really focused on more on, you know, signage, the things that we could actually control more. We were talking about bathroom attendance, you know, additional sanitizing of areas before people came and leave. There's just a lot that's to be very difficult in the restaurant business, and a lot of our restaurants here have bars included.
Exactly.
So things like social distancing and things, we find that to be very difficult to monitor and to enforce. So we are really focused more on what we could do as a staff and the suggestions we could make to people. Because, I mean, frankly, if people are going to go to restaurants or bars, they've got to take some responsibility on themselves on what you know, what they're willing to do as well.
Oh.
But most of the things that we have, we focused on are the things that we can actually do.
No, I agree. Like I said the other day, there's a pent up demand for it to get out and be with people and socialize and go to restaurants, etc. But their concern is if the state comes down and says you can only have 6 people per 1,000 square feet, there's no reason to open the door.
I think it goes back to what the mayor is saying, that if we need to be proactive in giving them our recommendations coming from people in the restaurant business. And so that, you know, someone that's not in the business, for instance, just says, well, if it works for a gym, it should work for a restaurant, as far as, you know, social distancing or something like that. So I do agree with the mayor wholeheartedly. We talked about that last week at length, that we feel like that's a huge concern and something that we need to be proactive about with our recommendations.
One of the things that we had a meeting earlier today with area attractions, and they're kind of a gap of some of the conversations that have occurred about protocols, because some of them have retail, but they've got indoor and outdoor spaces, and they're trying to figure out what applies, if it's their indoor standards are one and their outdoor standards are another, and that sort of thing. And so if we're going to spend some time on protocols, it seems like, Jonathan, you're an attraction with the tasting room and and then you've also got the retail, and Frank, if you with the retail, and Mark and Jeff and probably Brandon kind of work on some of those protocols to help us figure out how to vet those as a group, to try to simplify that there's not 7 lists out there that everybody's going, which one do I use, and maybe to gather and compile so we could look at that. Would that be a good work group to try to address some of that? Anybody else want to join the protocol work group? Chad, do you want to be on that one or you want to be on one of the other ones? You were on mute, so I didn't hear that, but.
You're off. You turn on, Chad, you're off.
Yeah, you're off still.
All
Now
right, there we are. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. That's fine.
Okay. Okay.
The CDC has quite a few protocol procedures
Yes.
concerning restaurants and bars. So you might want to check on their website and see exactly what they recommend that you feel like that you could incorporate into our protocols, procedures.
Great. Do we think that bars and restaurants are to be treated the same or separately? Because when the president talks about it, he sort of separates them, and the governor hasn't said much to try to weigh if he's going to see them as the same or separately.
I think it will be treated separately. I think that restaurants that have bars in them will have a different protocol for the bar area than they will for the seating area.
Okay. Thank you. And then another category that, and maybe it fits under attractions, but to me it seems a little bit different, even though it is an attraction, but we've got these theaters that do live performances and other sort of event kind of things. Should we have some people on the protocols to look at some of that kind of recommendation as well? And is there somebody that feels like they could represent that part of sort of the protocol standards for gatherings or events? And Mike, I don't know if there's somebody from the city that should be on that, because you guys have a lot of events in a typical summer, and what's that going to look like this year, and plans being.
I mean, I really think that, ultimately the rules will be fairly specific for movie theaters and Alabama Theater, whatever, that's going to be basically every third seat, every third row type of thing. Just so you know, we're efforting right now on, we only have, as far as the May events, and every weekend was booked. We are down to everything is canceled, but 2 hardball and 1 softball. And we're efforting right now to try to get from them how many teams you got coming this year, because all of them came last year.
Right.
So, the contact stuff is all canceled, at least for me.
I think you're going to see orders or recommendations that there would not be large gatherings. For instance, the music on Main that we're so used to in North Myrtle Beach. There probably will not be music on Main. If so, it will be late in the season. But as you all know, we usually have anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 people, depending on the band. And all of those will be canceled. Until we know for sure it's safe to gather that and that larger group.
Okay. So what I've got in my notes then for working through some of these issues in work groups is that we've got a identifying the resources, grants, loans, and financial assistance, including Mark, me, and Billy. Does anybody else want to join that one? So we had a couple of people join a little bit later.
Cheryl, this is Ray Sessions.
Okay.
I'll be glad to participate in that focus group.
Thank you. And then for the developing public outreach and information programs, I've got Joe, Monica, Mendel, Brandon, and then Kathy, I was thinking it might be good to have you on the protocol group. And I've got Kathy, Chad, Frank, Jeff, Jonathan, and Mark, if that's okay, Mark, can you do both with the resources and the protocols?
Yes.
Okay, that'd be great.
Frankie Villano, where's Frankie?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was.
I'm right here. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Frank, do you have a preference? I was thinking protocols, but you'd be great on any of them. So which one would you like to be on?
Protocol works. I'm probably like some of y'all, I'm getting protocols coming from all our different groups and so forth, whether it's a grocery association or whoever it is. So it should be fairly easy to put something like that together.
Great.
Great.
Okay. Did I miss anybody? Is anybody not on a group?
Can you go ahead and add Jeff Martini to the protocol group, please?
I did. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Okay, so if we were to, our plan is to meet again on Friday. Do you think everybody would have a chance to try to get your work groups to convene tomorrow or Thursday so that Friday we can talk about where, sort of outline a preliminary communication to city council at that work session where we're all together, say, okay, here's what we're going to concentrate on, here's what we've gathered so far, and just sort of provide an update to city council. Is that reasonable?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheryl, I think it's important that we do meet and are able to pull all this together on Friday. We are hearing today from many of our rental companies that, we'll be lucky to have 15% of our rooms rented in May.
In May.
Maybe 25 in June. And if we get 50%, and that's the prediction, if we get 50% of our rentals back this year, we're going to be lucky. So, anything that we can do to show the public and move forward as quickly as we can to let the public know that we are safe and you are welcome and you're going to be fine if you come to our community.
Right. That sense of urgency, and that was one of the things Kathy and I met last week after you elected us as chair and vice chair, just to kind of talk through, if we can get things jump started, do a preliminary report, and then meet again, get some input, and just move it quickly. We have 30 days, but we don't have to take 30 days because we're really at that critical point of trying to get things going in May.
Right.
And the communication aspect of this is critical as well. So we've got a lot to do in a short time frame. So hopefully people can make themselves available for the next couple of days so that Friday we can get some of this communication to council ready. Go ahead, Mayor.
Cheryl.
Changes and
Cheryl, it's Mark again. I'm sorry.
Okay, Mark, hang on just a second. The mayor was saying something and we'll come back to you. Go ahead, Mayor.
I think that you are going to see a lot of changes in the governor's orders in the next 2 weeks. He has extended some of them for 2 weeks. And so therefore, if we can be prepared and ready to go by the end of 2 weeks, that would be great.
Yeah, I agreed. I think that's good. Mark, what were you going to share?
What I was going to ask, is it possible for you to go ahead and set the meetings for those committees now, maybe for tomorrow or something? That way we don't have, there's no confusion. And Mayor, one other thing I was reading on WIS, it did say that in the meeting, I guess that you'll be at in Columbia on Wednesday, that letter would be discussed.
Okay.
I don't think I have a meeting Wednesday.
Okay, I said something about I guess the governor's meeting or I'm not sure what you just mentioned something about a meeting.
That's another group that probably,
Okay.
That's another group that will be meeting. Our group at Monday, each group is meeting a different day.
I understand.
I don't know yet.
So Mike, from a public meeting standpoint, all of our work group meetings need to also be open to the public. Is that right?
Yes.
So we need to make sure, do we have a certain number of hours we have to, it's like, can we call a meeting tomorrow and not have to worry about public meeting rules?
normally need 24 hours notice.
Okay, so should we be calling meetings for Thursday?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we've got 3 work groups. If we were to do them kind of bing, 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 so we could do like one Zoom meeting and then have people be able to participate in one or all. Does that make sense? And is 1:30 still your preference as far as having these types of meetings with the city?
1:30 works best for us. You know, as far as because of all the other police issues, et cetera, that we have.
We have a lot of calls and issues that we have to handle from morning, from overnight and so forth. So it works better for our staff if we can have that 1:30 meeting.
Right. So if we met at 1:30 and had like 2.5 hours, so we could do 1:30, 1:45 to 2:30 to 3:15. Does that work? And then we could go, and then if some of you want to stay on the call, is 45 minutes long enough for each of those? What's the sense of all of you?
I think 45 minutes is enough time to cover it.
Yeah, I agree, Chad. This is Mendel.
So if we could schedule it from 1:30 to 3:30, we could get 3 meetings in that time, right? And then go ahead and specify that we would start with loans and resources, moving on to protocols, and then communication.
Sounds great.
And we can join any of the meetings, all of the meetings. Okay.
Correct.
Oh, yes. If you want to be on for the whole time, you can, but the
Okay.
certain committees will meet. Yes.
And Cheryl, you'll send out that invitation?
Yes, actually, Mickey's been the one that's been generating it from the city, and then
Mickey.
so it could come out from Mickey, but I've been reinforcing it in a calendar invitation because they've been sending it also out with the YouTube for people to watch. So you'll probably get it twice, but when I send it out as a calendar, I can see who's accepted, and that's when people say I might be a few minutes late and that sort of thing. So that's really helpful too. Okay. Are there other areas where you all feel that we should concentrate our time and energy on relative to economic recovery that aren't in any of these work groups so far?
In the beginning, we were talking about that we wanted to make sure we marketed, I'll call them the locals first, to make people feel comfortable to come out again. Now, of course, if you're sick or you're fragile in any way, you shouldn't come out, but to market to the locals. And is this going to be a 2-step approach, that the first part A is to the local people and part B is to start inviting the short-term rentals and so forth, or are we doing everything together?
It's a great question. The part of that, we've got our own, with this task force, we've got our public outreach and information program. So we're going to define as a group what we think the city needs to be communicating, right? Meanwhile, we've got the accommodations are having meetings and communicating amongst themselves. The chamber is reaching out to have different business sector meetings. And so there's a lot of different moving parts of conversations happening. I think this group could be a resource to help bring all of that forward to the city council so they're familiar with all of those different efforts. And then what's the city's, what are we advising the city to do in all of that? The chamber has a strategy for communicating to the residents separately from consumers that the city has supported both financially and philosophically. They've signed off on what that looks like. So we are in the process of getting ready to go live with that. We're putting together videos and some mailers and some things like that that will go out to the residents, and the mayor does a series of videos. We've worked with Pat on some of the messaging for that, and how all of that dovetails is part of what this committee for the task force will be able to help identify. And meanwhile, we have accommodations that are starting to open. So there's another level of urgency to get ahead of this so we can express to customers what to expect when they come. You know, we've been maintaining a list of curbside restaurant, you know, who's doing restaurant, curbside and delivery. We're now also looking at what are those attractions, like some fishing are available. We have a healthy tips section on our consumer website, but we haven't started marketing like to say, come to North Myrtle Beach. Right now it's about retaining those reservations that are on the books so that we're still working to help the, you know, share with the residents what's up. But this is going to move very quickly, I think, for a couple of weeks, and just trying to be respectful and responsive. And then planning for that proactive part. There's probably still a couple of weeks away. That's my dog. Sorry about that. Somebody just came in the door, so.
Oh, good.
Well, probably, I will probably do my second video this coming Thursday.
Okay.
So it will have some messaging out to the public, to the people who live. My messages are all directed to the citizens of our city. So it will give them more information of what is going on and how we're addressing and how we're preparing.
Kathy, I think that's a really good question because there's a lot of groups doing great work, and with this body that the city's put together is sort of compile and collect and then communicate that and advise the city on where do they intersect and what do they need to do to help with amplifying the message, but also if there's something that they need to take action on regarding those messages, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So
I want to ask Jonathan, are you open at the winery?
Yes and no. So yes, we are allowing folks to come by the winery itself to pick up the orders that they have placed or to grab some other things. We're averaging about, I think, 8 people during the weekdays and 54 on a Saturday that are coming through to pick up the orders. And then we have our staff that we're trying to get to do certain things as far as cleaning and painting and all that kind of stuff that we're doing, but we're not doing tastings or any kind of alcohol consumption. Even though we did have a family to show up yesterday with a cooler and alcohol and food to try to eat on our patio. And Mayor, I have a couple. Can I ask 2 questions?
Yes.
So I had asked Cheryl one of these questions, and talking to a lot of the other retailers that I have talked to about the regulations, you know, dealing with the fire code or 5 people per 1,000 square foot. Was the 5 people per 1,000 square foot dealing with the customer only or also the staff included in the number?
Now that's a good question that I cannot answer, but I will find out an answer for you.
It's a great question because especially with restaurants, that's where you start to get into some challenges with how many people in the building, because social distancing in a kitchen is really going to be difficult, right?
I think it would be customers. I think it would be 5 customers per 1,000.
Well, I can tell you that yesterday or the other day at Home Depot, the only thing they were doing was counting customers as they came in the door to keep it to, I think it's what, 5 per 1,000 square feet. So they would know the answer to that. They're counting them.
Yeah, they're counting customers, right?
I don't think it applies to staff. That's.
I don't either.
Everything I've seen. Now, I'm not an expert on it. You got to keep in mind that we're now up to 29 executive orders on this deal. But I don't think it applies. My gut reaction says it doesn't apply to employees.
Mine also,
Hey, Mayor. Hey, oh, I'm sorry, Jonathan. Go ahead.
Well, I had just one more question. I guess this will be more for a city question. When we are up and running, I know we'll have protocols in place that we're going to be following. One of the questions that was just asked from our team was, we're going to try to enforce, every single protocol that we can, but, there's going to be certain people that disobey the rules, that are your customers. So for example, I'm just, while we do outdoor music, which I doubt we'll do this whole summer, but I'm just using that as an example. If we did have folks out on the patio that is more than 3 people together, that's sitting at a table, and I know, with that, it's a tricky situation. It's a family, all those things that we have to look at. But from a standpoint from the city, if the city comes by and sees that, are they going to come find the business for having those, more than 3 people together in one spot?
No, absolutely not. I mean, we'll call if you call dispatch and say, hey, I need to call because these guys won't listen, and one of them slugged me or something. But no, we're not going to get into that.
Okay.
It just burns hours because, they say, well, wait a minute, I'm married to her brother. How do you prove all that? No, we're not going to get involved.
Well, and that's usually only a complaint-driven type stuff. If someone calls and says, there's 15 people gathered together, holding hands or whatever, then, police officers check that out and they ask them to separate or whatever. But, our goal is safety and the health of people. It's people. So, and that's the way we're going to address it.
Mayor, I think that's some great questions right there because, I'm not I don't think the square footage is, to be quite frank, I think they're overreaching. And I'll give you an example. So we're looking at our pool deck to try to create proper social distancing. Well, I'm not going to put one chair because it'd be like me and my family going down the pool deck. We got 2 chairs together and then we create a little spacing and people move the chairs around, but stay in their social groups, right? So if you get an opportunity, and we appreciate your leadership and going up there and having the governor's ear, I don't think even the restaurants, if I went in with my family of 6, I go in a restaurant, I sit at a table, that's one section that's taken care of. It's not like, we're creating social distancing. It's social group distancing. So the square footage, I just feel like is not a good way, or even percentages of seating. It's really about this social distancing and safe distancing. I think that's the critical part. I'd just be careful in that overreaching square footage numbers.
Right.
I agree. As a family destination, we don't want to become couple oriented only in our defining of social distancing, because there are some good sized family groups that can rent a beach house here. And we need to be able to think about where are they going to be able to dine out and not prevent them from breaking into groups of 4 or something. So, I mean, we just really have to think about that. Kids to adult ratio, all that, just keep it simple.
Cheryl, there are times where 2 families vacation together.
Right.
And rent a beach home.
Mm-hmm.
So, we don't know everybody's circumstances.
But it's going to get a little complicated, like say that family of 8 or family of 6 or 2 families that are vacationing together and they go to a restaurant and they're a group together. But what about the people sitting around them? Are they going to be upset because they're sitting close to such a large group? I just think we have to think about that.
Yeah, and I think Kathy, on that note, I think we've got to look at common sense. I've got my mom, so that means I don't take my mom to dinner with me and my family. And my social group, I've got a very, very small social group, as I'm sure you are. We're trying to be smart and have common sense. We just don't want to be overreaching where it makes sense that, if we got 3-4 golfers that's their circle of friends and they play golf and that's over barefoot and that's the group that they hang with, are we going to tell them they can't sit at the same table? And I think that's where we got to come into common sense and
right.
And that's what we all wanted to do. We want to do the right thing, and that's
right.
we just don't want to overreach, in my opinion.
Right.
Good point, Kathy.
So the work groups, I guess one more thing is on, I had it separated for some reason on the agenda, but assigning the work groups we've done. But do each of you, when you meet on Thursday, want to self-select a sort of a work group chair, or do you want to do that now? Mendel, I was thinking maybe you would do the outreach communication chair.
That's fine.
And Mark, it kind of makes sense for you to do the finance part. And I don't know, Frank, since you said you've got a bunch of protocol stuff coming, if maybe it makes sense for you, or Jeff or Jonathan.
Didn't I also hear that, didn't Mark say he had some stuff written too, possibly, Mark? Or
yeah, we have a lot of information to circulate and share, right?
I think so, yes.
Go ahead, Mark.
Frank, I'll share that. I'll get with you and share what we've got so far, so you can be prepared.
Okay.
So we'll have a good, productive meeting.
You know, about protocols, you're talking about those, we haven't had a lot of problem with. One problem we do have is the customers not going by the protocols that we've established, like I've already heard people say, right? It hasn't been a big problem, but it's a little bit of a problem. So we need to kind of, I think, incorporate that into our protocols, so reminding the customer they need to behave too.
That's right.
Great.
Absolutely agree.
Monica, before we we want to have the mayor give us an update on Accelerate South Carolina, but I was wondering if you could give us an update on the McLeod Health and the perspective on resources and facilities, realizing a lot of people are watching this that aren't necessarily participating in the conversation and may watch it later on YouTube. I think it's always important to give that factual representation of how are we doing as a community as it relates to COVID and our resources as it relates to healthcare.
Yeah, the good news is we have not really seen the surge that we were expecting. So our community has really flattened the curve. We have, out of the number that we have tested at Seacoast proper, we have less than 8% of those patients that have actually been admitted. I'm sorry, less than 8% have been actually positive out of those tests that we have done over this 6-week period, and less than 5% of those have been admitted. So we are seeing really good numbers. And again, I think that's because of everyone practicing the social distancing and doing what they're supposed to do and being smart. So we are not worried about a capacity at this point from what we're seeing. We have opened up some time sensitive surgery, because what we saw was people were delaying care, and there's a point where you don't want to delay care anymore. So our message right now is the hospital is safe. Don't delay care, because you don't want to, heart attacks don't wait for COVID. And so still come into our emergency department and getting that emergency care that you need, or that emergent and time sensitive procedures that you need, is what you need to do in order to stay healthy and well, amongst obviously being safe about the COVID virus. So does that give you an update? Does anyone have any questions?
Have you found, this is Kathy, have you found that people are hesitant to call 911 in emergencies to get to the hospital because they're afraid to go to the hospital?
I think we're starting to see a trend of patients are coming in sicker because they are waiting. And so I don't know about the specific calls to 911. That would be an Horry County question from an EMS standpoint, but we are seeing our volumes in the emergency department have decreased. They are now kind of rebounding back, actually just the last 2 or 3 days, but we have seen patients waiting to come to get care, and then when they come, it's almost too late, or they're sicker than they need to be. So the message we're trying to get out too with an emergency department is we actually do a screening at the front door of our emergency department and put anyone that has respiratory type symptoms in one area. And all our regular emergency department visitors or patients in another area. So we are making it as safe in order to come in and get non-COVID related care. And so I think that's the important message for our residents that are here.
Well, that's a really important message to get out. That is really important with the communication, I think.
Okay.
Monica,
we've been doing that since the first week. So
those are great.
All of our emergency departments at Laura, Seacoast, and down in Carolina Forest. So I believe every hospital is doing that too. So
those are great numbers for our community, Monica.
Yep, very positive.
Very good.
As we start to prepare for opening for visitors, is there a concern that we could have a shortage of resources if we were at 15 or 20, 25% and working up to that 50% occupancy?
From a hospital standpoint,
Yes.
we are monitoring that every day. We would again, based on the time sensitive procedures, if we felt like we were reaching capacity, we would pull those back first and say, let's wait a few more days to have that or following week. And so we're not right now worried that we're going to run out of capacity. PPE was a huge issue that we all heard about early on. That's starting to break loose, and that's not as a big of issue either. That goes into widespread testing, which is really important. And so we're still monitoring the testing. We're still not testing everyone. I mean, there's still reasons to get tested, not just because I want to test, but we're seeing a better availability of tests in order to do that. So if you are having an elective procedure right now, for example, we actually do the COVID test on you to see if there's a community spread that we need to worry about, even if you didn't have signs and symptoms. But that's an important point to know, not for the patient, but for our employees, because based on you having COVID or not, even if you're symptomatic or asymptomatic, tells our employees what type of PPE they need to wear, or the personal protective equipment. So by knowing that a patient, even though they're asymptomatic, or if they're asymptomatic and negative, we can use less PPE in that procedure than if they were COVID positive.
Thank you. Anybody have any other questions for Monica? Thank you, Monica. Really.
You're welcome.
Mayor, we were hoping you could give us a little bit more of an update on the Accelerate South Carolina, and then you're on the governance committee, and any words of wisdom or things that you need help from us on related to any of that would be great.
I'll be glad to give you an update. As you said, I'm on the governance committee, which it covers your municipalities, your counties, and your education system. It's very interesting. This year there will be an $85 billion loss on higher education. The independent colleges will have basically a $53 million impact loss in their education system. There are concerns about when colleges start back for their budgeting, because of the fact that tax dollars are going to be less, and there will be less tax dollars to spread around to the different colleges. Also concerns about students from hotspots coming into the community, coming into the state when we do start our schools back. We talked about our budgets. All municipal and county budgets are due in July. We are asking the state to reconsider and maybe possibly extend that time, because it's going to be very hard for any of us, any municipality or county, to actually create a budget when we have no idea what kind of funds are going to be coming in. We're in uncharted territory, and we have no idea what our funding will be, but we do know predictions are 50% less as far as visitors in our area this year, which will make a huge difference. We also talked about the use of ATAX money, that there are a lot of stipulations on what ATAX money can be used for. And as you well know, Cheryl, it is basically for anything that is tourist related. There are counties and cities that are asking that they change the law, and not forever, one that will sunset to where the ATAX money can be used possibly for general fund projects that are payroll and that type of thing. One of the challenge of cities as I continue is cash flow. We all are the communities and the tourism are being hit very hard. The budgets will need to be adjusted. We are concerned about how people are going to pay their property tax. How are they going to pay for their business license? What do we do with late penalties? We all, as municipalities, are going to have to adjust in some way. Also, there's less money when it's time for the workforce to return. So unemployment, all that will be affected. Those who are furloughed, not all will be called back at one time. They will probably be staged, and it may be quite a while before we get back to full capacity with our payroll. We're very concerned about the court backlog. We know that there's going to be a backlog of cases, and many will not have the ability to pay their fines. Also, overcrowded jails. We may have to look at possibly prioritizing of home-based incarceration. Our sports tourism, as Mr. Mahaney had just told you earlier, has been hit very hard. So we're trying to identify and reach out and come up with some kind of protocol for lower contact sports. Our immediate steps are that we need to design to make patrons. That is our number one. Create to keep both patron and employees safe. We must address staff training, health screening of staff, health screening of patrons, the use of our PPE, identification of single-use items, and the list goes on. And we also will need financial assistance from the state with recovery based on size of our economy and not our population. The $1.9 billion that the state has received, and it is here in the state. It is deposited here in the state from the federal government. Those procedures of how it's going to be, how to apply and how it's going to be distributed have not been set, but they are meeting today and tomorrow, and we should know soon. Of course, it will be the governor's final decision on how that money will be spent. But there are a lot of stipulations about how that money is going to be spent that the federal government has, the guidelines the federal government has in place. Most of it is to be used on how a community or a municipality or a county, how the money to reimburse them with the money they've spent in preventing the COVID-19 or what they plan to spend to help with this health and safety of COVID-19. So a lot of moving parts. We talked a long time about the necessity of our state getting back to work. Everyone, there were House of Representative members, there were senators there, Ports Authority was there, represented counties, cities, and everyone knows that we must get our state back to work. And we feel like that we can do this and it will be safe, and we feel like it's the best thing for all of our citizens. I thought it was very interesting. 39 tankers, ships have canceled to come into the ports in Charleston. Most every one of them are from Asia, the Asian countries, and they, you know, those are goods. Those are goods that we will not be able to get in our state. Those are big tankers, and they carry a lot of goods. So I thought it was interesting that 39 have canceled that will not be coming to South Carolina. That's about it, Cheryl.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the mayor? Okay. Any other comments, other business? Anybody want to share anything that they're hearing or seeing or questions they want to ask?
If I may, Cheryl,
Yes.
we have, as most of you know, we have short-term rental units in all of our multifamily communities. And we also have full-time residents in all of our multifamily communities. And there is a real concern. You mentioned about your Facebook. There is a real concern about short-term rentals opening up. People are very concerned about walking in the hallways, using the same handrails, using the same elevator, being in the common spaces, not knowing what people have touched. Where are these short-term renters coming from? There are also concerns about if you have a large resort and you have a housekeeping staff, that's fine. They have protocols, they do things the way they're supposed to do, perhaps. But what about these one-person cleaning outfits who buy their supplies at Walmart and they're cleaning these short-term rental units? So there's been a real push as to people not wanting short-term rentals at all. They would rather see second homeowners using their homes, using their second homes, their condos, whatever, before short-term rentals are allowed. And that's just what I'm getting.
Joe, what I'll do is I will send you what I sent to council earlier today, which may help you. It's the governor's orders and the CDC website. But all of our orders have been superseded by the governor's. It's highlighted in yellow. So it's on the way. That's Brookstone, right? Let me make sure.
Barefoot.
Yeah, but what's your email?
GOS.
Yeah. Okay, but I thought it had Brookstone. If you don't have it, call me. You got my number. I just shot it to you.
Yeah. Okay.
That will at least.
Thank you. But I just want you to, like you mentioned the complaints and some of the comments, et cetera, that you've been getting. Just be prepared.
Oh, look, just so you know, I mean, we just sent out a press release, which I'd sent it to a couple of y'all. We're getting a call a minute here. So yeah, we understand about calls.
Joe, I think it's important for our citizens to realize that when the governor puts an order in his order, he plainly states that his order supersedes any municipalities.
Exactly.
Ours was nullified the minute he put his order in. So therefore, we have to follow the governor's orders. That's what we do.
Exactly. And I have explained that many times in the last week.
Right, but you know, for citizens to get upset with their local government over a state order, that's really not fair to the city government.
Joe, do you think the homeowners association, like the management companies, are having any conversations about some of the common areas in some of those facilities when you talk about lobbies and elevators for some of the HOAs?
We definitely are.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. But what comes down to is if you have a management company has a cleaning company that takes care of the exterior of the building, the common areas, et cetera. But then the individual unit owners who rent their units through whoever, they have a one-person cleaning crew that comes in there, somebody who works part-time, a couple days a week, and they buy their stuff at Walmart. And what's going to happen when the renters move out and this one, usually it's a lady, goes in and spends 2.5 hours cleaning that unit?
But Joe, I think that it's important for the homeowners association maybe to step up their management company's responsibility, provide more cleaning in the common area. Unless you're going into that unit, you're not going to be picking up any germs inside the unit. So the management companies, it's just like rental companies. They're going to have to set some protocols to keep the common areas cleaner.
Yeah, we've been attending.
Brandon, go ahead and Kathy. Go ahead.
Just that we've been attending webinars with our with Community Association Institute and our property management, and it's all about that, Mayor. You know, the extra protocols again for sanitation and so forth, and all the common areas. I think the issue that Joe is referring to that is most troublesome, and we're going to have it here too, is people who rent their own units out and how those are set. Now, to your point, as long as the common areas are taken care of, there's not much else you can do about people renting private space. So it's up to the owners to take care of that. But that's a lot of what's being voiced, concern about that, the short-term rentals.
Sure.
Yeah, I would just add to those concerns, and it's already been said by the mayor and by Kathy as well, but those information is power. And so part of the concern, part of what fuels that kind of concern is not understanding what measures are being taken, which is the suggestion that the mayor is putting out there, which is that, you know, in light of COVID, every business, including property management companies, have to do more and importantly, communicate what they're doing to the people who are expressing concerns about those areas that they are in control of. So it's one about doing more, and it's two about communicating that that is being done, which is part of the charge of this task force. So. You're
right. Communication's everything.
Thank you. Well, I think, you know, Joe, to answer part of your question too, is when the messaging as well as the protocol conversations are being convened on Thursday, is making sure that we've reached out to some of those homeowners and finding out what they're doing and share those protocols so that it gets forwarded and we can use that in what we're reviewing and then ultimately sending forward to council as some recommendations. So very good. Other comments or thoughts before we adjourn today?
I think it's been a great meeting. Good feedback. Thank you all for taking your time to serve.
Joe and Kathy, check your email. I sent you a number of things.
Okay, I saw it come up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second, Billy.
Thank you, Billy. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we will convene again in the series of loans and resources first at 1:30. And then every 45 minutes we'll go until we've got protocols and then communication. So we'll see you all on Thursday. Thank you.
See you then.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.